Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be introducing Simple GIS Client version 14. While users of earlier versions of Simple GIS may find many of the interface features we're going to be demonstrating today familiar, there are a few differences that we'll discover as we go along. And if you are new to Simple GIS Client, well then this is a good introduction video to kind of introduce you to some of the basics on navigating and using Simple GIS Client. To begin with, when you first launch the application, you should come to a screen that will look similar to this. If you notice in this main application window, there's a couple of buttons here on the left-hand side, and then there's a few links and some check boxes. And the two buttons you see here is one is New Project, which is the screen that we're on now for creating a brand new Simple GIS Client project. And then we have an Open Project button. By default, when you first launch the application, if you've never created a Simple GIS Client project file, you'll start at the New Project screen. And this particular screen, what you'll see is in the middle of the screen is a set of what we call project templates. And all these are basically guides or wizards, if you will, to help users get started on creating a new project and accomplishing a specific task. They don't inhibit the functionality of Simple GIS Client in any way. In fact, any project that you create from any template has all of the functions of any project that you would create from a different project template. Again, it's just these templates have some specific guides or helpers at the beginning to help users with whatever task they are trying to accomplish. And if you notice, the templates are set up as a series of tiles, and so if you look, the very first one here is called Default GIS Project. And this just creates a new empty project just for general purpose GIS analysis and visualization for creating maps and what have you. And as you click on a specific tile, you'll notice a description that appears underneath the tile, as well as an additional information in the text box at the bottom of the main application window. So really this first project template is probably the only one that really doesn't have any kind of a guide or helper at the beginning, because it just simply creates a new project for you to start working in. Conversely, we have some others here. So the next one on the list is Street Atlas. And this is a project template that allows the user to download detailed street map data from Simple GIS to their local machine. And so you can do this by US state by selecting a specific state, or you could download a data set for the entire US. And this data set has full geocoding and routing support. So if you use this project template and you download this data to a local laptop or Windows tablet device, you can take it in the field. And then if you have an external GPS receiver like the Global Stat, the little Popup GPS receivers that connects to a USB or anything like that, you can use that for routing and navigation in the field as well. We have a project template here to help guide users for taking data that may be stored in an Excel spreadsheet or CSV file, and to import that data into a new shapefile and map those points into a map. Then we have a territory mapping template and some asset management. Even a project template here for users that may want to create a special layer for tracking prospects or customers and keeping track of their contacts and how many contacts and visits they've made to those customers or potential prospects or leads. If you were to click or you wanted to use one of these templates to create a new project, and one of the things I'll just mention real quickly for those that may be used to Simple GIS Client version 13 or maybe an earlier version, used to these templates, they really didn't have any guides or wizards in them. They were just populated project files with some base map data. So instead of, by function, this was organized by what base map data was contained in a particular project template. Now, whenever you launch one of these project templates, you'll be prompted for what base map data, if any, that you want to go ahead and add to your map. So just to demonstrate, if we were just to select this default GIS project template, to start a new project using one of these templates, you just simply double click on the tile, and then you just follow the prompts that comes up. So in this case, as you see, the first prompt on this one is to add a base map information, and then you have a list of available base map data. You can scroll through this list and select any of this base map data that you want to use to add to your map. You don't have to select a base map. If you just wanted to start with a blank empty map and that's what you wanted to start with, and you're just going to add your own data on top of it, you can certainly do that. You would just hit the cancel button at this point. Or if you did want to select one of these base maps that's available, again, these are organized in tiles as well. You would just select the tile and either click apply, or you can just double click on the tile itself, and then it would add that as a base map here in your map. Now, one of the things I will point out for those, especially that have never used Simple GIS Client, the project file is really just a container, and it just holds a set of documents, and it has some scripts and menu items, and the data itself is stored in layers. It just references that data. So the data itself is not really stored in the project file. The project just holds references to the data and organizes the data on how you want it to visualize it, and perform any analysis or whatever that you want it to do with the data. And the very first, the most common project document I guess you'll work with within a given project file is what we call the map data view document, which is what you're seeing here. And this is a document that contains layers that allows you to visualize data, GIS data, and it's organized as you see here. There's a couple of along the left hand side. What we see here, kind of where my mouse is here, is what we call the table of contents, and this is where all the layers as you add them to your project would appear at. So right now the only layer we have loaded in is the OpenStreetMap layer, and of course I can turn this layer on and off by simply clicking on the checkbox next to the layer name. If the layer had a legend associated with it, like if it was a shapefile, which is a industry standard GIS format, it's vector data, not raster data like this particular. This is actually a web mapping service layer. You could expand this to see the legend associated with that layer. It's just by clicking on the plus button next to the layer as well. In addition, there are some quick search menus, so you can actually set up to perform what we call quick searches, which are like predefined queries based upon a particular layer and field, such that users can just type in a value, field value that they're looking for, and it would bring them to that on the map. There is more information that's covered in other tutorials. It's not going to be covered in this particular demonstration, but just know that that does exist, and that can be set up as a way to quickly locate features on your map. And you can consult some of the other tutorials for Simple GIS or the user's manual on how to set that up. There's also a search bar here for street address. So this is basically just locating street addresses. This only supports US addresses currently, and so it can use either a geocode database provided by Simple GIS that can be downloaded to your local machine, or in the absence of that, it'll use the U.S. Census Geocoder service from the U.S. Census Bureau to locate those street addresses. The other thing you'll notice is the way the document is set up is you have a set of drop-down menus, pull-down menus at the very top. So as you click on these, you'll get a list of additional menu items underneath each of these headings as you move your mouse across it. Then you have two sets of toolbars. The first toolbar is what we call the command toolbar, and this just executes simple commands within the map data view document and doesn't require any interaction with the map. So for example, there is a zoom in function, and when you click on that, it simply zooms in to the map by predefined percentage. And then same thing with the zoom out function, it does the same thing. Some tool buttons that you'll notice will have a drop down arrow located next to the button itself, and this indicates that there are other tool buttons available. If you click on the arrow itself, you'll see it drop down. So this first command tool button here in the very upper left is what we call our kind of a layer management tool set. So this is where you can add data. So you can add your own data to the map. Here you can create a new shapefile point layer basically from street addresses that you may have saved in an Excel spreadsheet or CSV file. You can create new shapefile layers from scratch. Some special shapefile layers we call assets and contacts, which has some additional functionality, and again, that'll be covered in other tutorials. You can also remove layers from your map. And then if you wanted to add a different base map to your map, you can do that by simply clicking on this Add Base Map Layer to Map. It brings up this Add Base Map dialog again, and you can select an additional base map that you might want to add to your map as well. If you wanted to add additional layers to your map for data that you might have, you could add data as new layer to map, the very first selection in this drop down. And as you see here, these are all the different layer types that Simple GIS supports. We have file-based data, which is like shapefiles, for instance, which is vector data. It's an industry standard GIS format, like I mentioned, as well as it can support data from Excel spreadsheets or CSV files that already have a latitude and longitude coordinate, and so it would have a longitude column with a longitude coordinate and a latitude column with a latitude coordinate. So if you have that, you could add that table and map those as points on your map. There's also support for raster imagery. So if you have aerial imagery or satellite imagery in, let's say, Mr. Sid format, JPEG format, TIFF, most of the industry standard raster type formats, JPEG 2000, ECW, any of those, you can add those as additional image layers to your map as well. It also supports internet mapping services. So if you have some web service that you want to connect to and you have that information on how to connect to that, you can do that through this internet mapping service. So it supports the standard WMS web mapping service, also WMTS for the web mapping tile service, as well as just typical tile mapping services as well. We also have what we call a group layer, which is really just a container to group multiple layers kind of together within a single grouping. And so that's pretty straightforward. Event layer is similar to what we talked about as far as if you have data in an Excel spreadsheet or in a CSV file that already has a latitude, longitude coordinate. Certainly you could add that through the file-based data. But also if you have a data table in a relational database or third-party database, you could connect to that through an ODBC connection and map that as well onto the map. Then we have an image DB layer, which is unique to Simple GIS, and so what that is like an image catalog. It's a way that you can group multiple raster images, and it treats them as a single layer. And as far as visualizing, you see it as a single layer, so it mosaics all of those separate images into a single image on your map. And then we have Simple GIS server layers, which works with the Simple GIS server application. This is a separate product from Simple GIS that allows you to serve data out in a client-server relationship, and so that you can connect to layer serve from that as well. So if I want back to file-based data and I wanted to just add in some of this data, I could select the particular data that I wanted to add. So anything that ends with a SHP file extension is a shapefile. Of course, right now my file type, this is the filter it's using, is set to all data. If I only wanted to see shapefiles, DXF layers, something like that, I could change the filter. If I only want to see raster imagery, I could select that. So basically, to add a layer, you just simply select or double click on the file name. It'll add it as a new layer, and the first thing it'll come up with is the layer properties dialog box. And so this is just where you set the properties for the layer. You start with the basic settings. You can change the layer name if you want to. You could take out the file extension on it if I wanted to. You can set different scale levels at which point you want the layer to be visible. So if you only want it to be visible within a range, you can set this minimum scale and maximum scale. Layer projection normally gets populated automatically if the shapefile has an associated projection file. If not, you can set the projection manually here if you know what the map projection is that the data is in. Create custom form for attribute data. You can have your own custom data form on how you want to visualize the data when you click on a feature to view its data. You could do that. And again, all of this is covered in other tutorials, and so I won't cover that in any detail here. Again, you can set legend properties here. Again, I won't go into any details on setting the legends, just know that's covered in other tutorials in the user manual, as far as labeling as well. So this is just where you set all of the different properties for the layer. And as you click apply, you still have the dialog box up, so you could add additional layers if you wanted to. Once you're finished with this, you just simply close the add layer dialog box to dismiss it. And now if you notice, you have a new layer added to your map here. Whatever is highlighted on the table of contents that we're showing here is what we're considering the active layer, and that is important in a lot of ways because many of the tools operate based upon what is the current active layer in your table of contents. So just be aware of that. And as I mentioned, this top toolbar are what we call command tool buttons. They execute a command and they don't require interaction with the map. Conversely, this bottom set of toolbars are what we call interactive tools, and these require some type of interaction with the map. So for example, if I click on the Zoom Direct tool, it doesn't do anything right away because it is expecting me to draw a rectangle around the area that I want to zoom to on the map. So it is expecting some interaction from me on the map, so I'm going to click and drag an area to zoom into that area on the map. Likewise, I have a View Feature Data tool, so I can click on this tool. Again, it doesn't do anything. And remember, I mentioned that a lot of the tools operate on what is the active layer in the map. So if my OpenStreetMap is my active layer, let's highlight it here, and I click on the View Feature Data, it's expecting me to click on the feature whose data I want to view. Well, if I try and click on this star, which is the new shapefile that we just added here, nothing's going to happen, because again, I've set OpenStreetMap as my active layer, and so it's looking for features in this layer, and this is an internet mapping service, and so there is no attribute data associated with that. If I make my hydrants the active layer by simply clicking on it, I can see that it changes shading to the green, and now I click on this star button, I now get the attribute data that pops up for that feature. So again, very important to remember that. This is the attribute data. This is the dialog box that comes up for displaying the attribute data. I can see here in this particular shapefile I've defined, and when I created the shapefile specific, I had some date fields. I had a special field to hold some photos that I wanted to associate with this particular feature, as well as a linked table that covers some inspection data for that feature. And so all of that is set up when you create your new shapefile. If you add an existing shapefile that may not have that, it would just show the specific attribute fields for that particular shapefile. Of course, it has a couple of buttons at the top here where I can flash the feature on the map if I want to make sure I'm looking at the right feature that I'm viewing the attribute data for. And then this publish report, if you click on this, you can actually export the attribute data to an Excel report. And so if you was to click on that, it would come up and prompt you to enter in a file name for your Excel report. And so as you do that, it would generate that, and then it would open up Excel and display that report. So I'll give it just a second because I'm waiting for Excel to load. And then once Excel loads, it would open up that report, then it generates. So in this case, I just had the single feature that I was viewing, and this just gives you the information for that feature. So that's kind of the basics of the map data view document. And I mentioned that Simple GIS excuse me, is a multi-document interface. And so a project file can contain many documents. And open documents appear in the main application window as a set of tabs at the bottom in the lower left corner. So you see the current tab is my map view 1. That's the document that I have open now with this map. I see I have this default GIS project, which that's just the name of the project template that we started with. And so that's the name that it's given the project for now. And we haven't saved the project, so that's the name that it has. But if I click on this tab, you see my screen changes and I'm now at the main project window. And then I can see all the different types of data or documents that I can have. I can have map data views, and I can have multiple map data views in a single project. I can have tables, separate tables. This could be external tables from, this could be an Excel table. This could be a relational database table that we've connected to through ODBC. It could be a DBase table, or it could be the attribute table associated with a shapefile, for instance, in our document. And then we have maps, and these are documents that are used for publishing. So they're related to the map data view. So they're used when you're ready to publish maps. And so that's what those documents, you can publish the map to PDF, to a graphic format, or to hard copy. And one thing you can notice is I go back to the map view 1. So I just clicked on its tab to go back to this particular document. Is one thing I wanted to show you is I mentioned attribute data. So if I select my shapefile here, hydrants, and I click on this command tool called View Layer Attributes, it's going to open up another one of those documents. And I see that it's called hydrant. So this is the actual attribute table for that shapefile in that map view. And so this particular shapefile just so happens I only have one feature in this shapefile. So if I had multiple features, I would see all those rows of data listed here. In the table document, I also have pull down menus. I have a toolbar as well. And if I notice now, if I go back to my project window, my main project, and I go to my tables tab, I see that I have one table document in here, which it created when I clicked on that view attributes on my shapefile there. And so it added this table document, which I now have here. If I wanted to close this document, so that I wouldn't see its tab at the bottom, I can just right click on its tab, and as I do, I just click close form. And as I see, this tab disappears, and now I'm back at the project document. If I wanted to go back to my map, I just click on this tab that is still open. And so any of the tabs that appear on the bottom are open documents. And you just click on the particular tabs to navigate between the open documents. There may be additional documents in your project that just aren't open, and they would be shown in the, here if I go back to my project window, under, you know, either whatever document type, the tab for that document type, they would appear under that particular tab. Now, one other thing I wanted to show real quick is I can actually undock these tabs from the application window. So what I did, I just clicked on my Map View 1 tab and just drug it away from the application window, and I see that I undocked. And then if I just drag it back over the application window, I can redock it into my application window. So where this could be useful is if you are afforded a multiple monitor display. So let's say if you had 2 or 3 monitors, and if you wanted to, you could take, for instance, I showed just earlier how I was viewing this attribute table for the hydrants. If I wanted to have this map view document on one monitor and its associated attribute table on another monitor, I can simply undock those from the main application window and position them on those separate monitors, and it will allow me to view both of those side by side. And so that could be a useful feature. One thing that we have to pay attention to in order to be able to do this, if I go back and I go to my file menu on my drop down, and let me just mention real quick, so of course this is where you would save your projects or save your project as. You would select a location and give it a file name of what you wanted to save the project file to, and then you can simply just come back and reopen that project file. The other thing is, from the file pull down menu or drop down menu, you can also always go back to the new project screen or the open project screen. And so let me just go back to the new project screen, and of course here it's asking me, my project's been modified, do I wish to save changes? I'm not going to save my changes right now, but it just gives you a prompt before you close the project and you might lose work. It's just prompting you whether you wanted to save it or not. So I had mentioned earlier about the new project and open project window. If you have created and saved a project in Simple GIS, when you first launch the application, instead of coming to the new project screen, you would actually come to the open project screen. And you can get to it as well just by clicking on the Open Project, New Project button, or as you saw just previously when I already had a project created and I went to the File drop-down menu, you can select New Project or Open Project as well. But on the Open Project screen, of course, you can navigate to a specific drive and then navigate to a folder location. And any Simple GIS Client project files would appear as you click on a folder. They would appear here on the right hand side as a list. So you could just double click on one of these to open that project. In addition, in the lower half of the Open Project screen, you'll see a list of recently opened project files. So if you've had several project files that you've created and you've opened different ones, they would appear in a list here below. And you can also open the project just by simply double clicking on it here in this list as well. And then that would just open up the project. Now I showed you too a couple of things about undocking. So let me right quick go back and show you one important setting on that. Go back to Open Project. If you notice here on the application screen, on the main application screen on the left are a couple of check boxes. And one of them is Allow Document Undocking. So if this is checked, this supports you or allows you to undock those child windows from the main application window by dragging its tab away from the application window. If this is not checked, then you cannot undock those child windows. And the reason that's there is sometimes you can accidentally undock windows from the application window. So if this is unchecked, you just don't have to worry about that. So if this is not checked, if you go back and open a project, and again, if I was going to try and undock my map view 1 from the main application window, if I try and click on the tab and drag it, it would not undock it. As you see, I mean, it acts like it is. You can see it kind of looks like it's going to, but it actually does not undock. So that's what that setting is for. Also, if you notice, there's another checkbox called Show Pop-Up Hints. And so this is pretty self-explanatory. If this is checked, as you hover your mouse over a tool button or a menu option, you'll see any pop-up hint that may be included for that tool button, which can be useful. However, please note that on some devices, especially for like Windows laptops or tablet devices that may be touchscreen compliant, the pop-up hints, they can be a nuisance at times. And so if you don't want to display the pop-up hints, you just simply uncheck that box as well. And you can always re-enable it by checking the box again. And this is a universal setting, so it impacts any project that you have in Simple GIS. In addition, there are some links here that we hope are helpful. On the left-hand side, the one here is Contact Us. So this will just simply bring you to our Contact Us page on the website. So if you need to drop us a line to ask a question or have some comments, please feel free to use that and we'll reply as soon as possible. There's also a link for the user manual that is installed with Simple GIS Client, and so this is just a PDF document for a user manual that's you can open and view all of the features available in Simple GIS Client. There's also a tutorials link. This will bring you to our web page where there are numerous tutorials where you can see some of the functionality demonstrated in Simple GIS Client. Now, I will note at the time of this recording, many of these tutorials are based on earlier versions of Simple GIS Client. We are in the process of refreshing a lot of these, but even those that's created in earlier versions, you know, some of the dialogues may look a little different, some of the tools may be in a different location, but overall the basic principles are the same. And then we also have a plugins link, and so one of the powerful features with Simple GIS Client is it is customizable. You can create your own VB scripts if you need to. Customize your own menus. In addition, it can be extended through the use of plugins. And so we have some plugins that are available from Simple GIS that you can install that extends the functionality of the core Simple GIS Client application. If you want to see a list of those plugins and what's available, you can simply click on this link and it'll bring up the plugins manager. Here you will see a list of plugins available. And as you click on a particular plugin, you'll see the description of the plugin here in the upper right of the dialog, as well as you'll see whether the plugin has been installed or not. And also, if there's an additional license fee associated with the plugin, you would see that listed here as well. And so as you click on a plugin, you can scroll through the list, read a brief description about it. In addition, you also see there's a link to the website where you can get more information about the available plugins. And you can also install a plugin by simply clicking on it and then clicking on the Install Now button. And this will actually download the installer and install it into your Simple GIS Client application. So I'm going to close this for now. And I think that covers pretty much the basic introduction to the software. We'll have some follow-up tutorials again, and we'll actually have some that will cover each of those project templates, especially those that have the guided help or the wizards. And we'll cover those in some follow-up tutorials and going through those specific project templates, as well as all of the other functionality that's available within the software itself. So hope you've enjoyed it. Hope this was useful, first of all. And I do encourage you to visit the website. It's simplegissoftware.com, all one word, and you can find it in the description of this video. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us on our Contact Us page. Thank you. Have a good day.